My name is Kathlyn Eyitemi. I live in Nigeria. I'm a gender advocate. Basically, my focus is on rape and domestic abuse, and that is also in regards to my story, which is about how I survived rape and domestic abuse as well. I was 4 years old. I used to live in this little hut with my grandma in a tiny little village back here in Nigeria. When I came to know myself at 4, I was already being molested by a cousin of mine who also lived there as well. At the time I was 4, I realized he was already molesting me, and I didn't tell anyone about it. I remember feeling just too ashamed to tell anyone. When I got to 5, I was taken out of that environment to go and live with my father now, because my parents were divorced already at the time. So I was taken out of that environment to go and live with my father, and that was when it stopped. The reason why I know that I was 4 is because at age 5, they took me away from my grandmother's place and into the city to live with my father. That age 4, I have memories of things that happened around that time. My memories aren't particularly jumbled. I just know that he used to lure me or take me into his room, and the room was like in a compound, my grandmother's compound, where other family members lived as well. I remember he used to take me there and then just do stuff to me that way. In nature, he was penetrating me. When I got older, I started hearing things about virginity, and I got to understand that, okay, if you've not had sex with a man, you are still a virgin. And I knew what had been done to me when I was 4, so I already knew that I couldn't possibly be a virgin. So I remember just approaching someone when I was in high school now, and I said, what happens if somebody has penetrated you when you were a child? And then they explained to me and things like that. I just remember checking myself a couple of times, being really confused about that, just feeling very terrible about not being a virgin. And then people would ask me, like girls, we play around, and they would say, are you a virgin? And I didn't know what to say, because what was I going to say? I didn't know what to say. And I remember having my first and not being able to answer. It was very confusing. When I went to live with my father, we were like 8 or 10 children from different mothers, and there was just so much abuse. My mother wasn't there. There was a lot of flogging, a lot of verbal abuse. My father was verbally abusive and physically abusive. His temper used to just flare all the time, and then he would just beat us for no reason. And then I remember when I got to live with my father, the earliest times, right? I was 5. There was a lot of hunger. I felt starvation, because the maids used to starve me. I was used to eating at any point in time when I was with my grandma, but now I was in my father's house where the meals were scheduled, and I didn't know that you have to, and I couldn't eat well. I couldn't eat much, because how do you eat with 8 other children? So I was always hungry. And then as I grew older, the verbal abuses, the beatings, sometimes my dad used to just threaten to throw us out of the house. There were times he would lock you out or throw you out of the house. You had to stay outside. Even when it's dark, you stay outside for a long time before you could get back into the house. I felt I was already suicidal by the time I was 15. There were times many times I just felt like dying, like taking my life. I didn't want to leave a lot of times because of the pain, and I didn't see my mother as much. She would just come maybe once in 2 years or something to see me. Sometimes not so frequent, other times more frequently, but most of the time she wasn't there. She lived very far away in the villages, and there were no mobile phones or anything, so we couldn't talk for a long time. So I was just a very lonely, sad kid. I endured physical and mental abuse until my mid-20s. Matter of fact, that was why I decided to get married. I just wanted to get away from all the abuse. That's why I got married in the first place. I just met him, and then 4 days later, he was proposing to me. And I was saying yes because he was the first guy I had dated that was serious about getting married. At that point in time, I had said to myself, if I see a man that wants to marry me, I am just going to get married and leave this house. Now, when I think back, it was a really, really horrible decision. But at the time, I thought it was the best thing that was happening to me. Somewhere in December, and he had and he proposed. And then we had agreed to get married by April of the next year, April of 2006, we wanted to get married. But a couple of things happened. Number one, my father was vehemently against the marriage. He didn't want me to marry him. That was number one. Number two, I got raped earlier in the year. I got raped again. Well, I got raped while I was at the university on campus. So there was just a lot going on at the time. There was a lot of robbery going on. And that time, these boys were students, as we knew. They were breaking into homes and robbing people. And I was aware, but, it was school life. We were just, okay. I wasn't thinking I would be a victim of rape or something. But that night, I was in my room. It was this off-campus hostel. I don't know if you have that where you are, but off-campus in the hostel where we rented rooms. We rented rooms, single rooms. And so these guys, that day, they just came to my compound and they burst through the door. They broke my door. They demanded for my jewelry. They yanked my hair. They just pulled my hair. I had these braids on and they just pulled my hair. They pulled all the braids out, like the middle, the whole chunk. They just pulled it off my scalp with the hair like that. And they just started beating me, I guess to frighten me. And they said, "Where's your jewelry? Where's the gold? Where's the gold?" And I had some pieces of gold jewelry in a teacup. I remember they were in a teacup, and I brought out all of them and gave it to them. And I thought it was enough. Apparently it wasn't. And then this guy just said, "Take off your clothes." I just remember I think I was wearing something really flimsy. And he just yanked everything and started to have his way. And then he shouted to the other one and said, "I'm having my way with her." And that one came over and beat me some more and then raped me. And then they left after some time. I think I had a temporary memory loss at the time because I didn't know where I was for the first couple of minutes. I remember just losing it. And after they were gone, I was just lost. And I remember calling my fiance. I remember it was like 6 a.m. Then when I called him and I told him what had happened to me. And he said, "Okay, go to the hospital." And I went to the hospital. And the doctor didn't know what to do with me. He gave me painkillers, I think. And the nurse just said, "Have you told your fiancé? Have you told anyone what happened?" I said, "No, except my fiancé." She said, No, you don't tell him. You don't tell him. You don't tell anyone. You don't tell anybody." And I said, "Okay." And I left. The thing I remember again about that, after school was, I had to pack up and leave. I went back home. when I got home, I told my sisters, and they were just staring at me like, why did you tell us? Like, why do you have to tell us this? That was the look on their faces, so I kept quiet. So for like a very long time, I couldn't talk about it with anyone. So when it happened at first, that morning after I left the hospital, I think I went to see my pastor, and I told him what had happened to me, and he also didn't know what to say to me. And I said, why is this happening? I just started, taking God really seriously. Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? No answers. He didn't have answers for me, so I left. And I had to live with that. And then, I remember going to class, right? After it had happened, I went back to class. But the problem was when I got into school, like on campus, I didn't know who had raped me. Every time I sat near a guy, I would feel like, is this the person? In class, I couldn't concentrate because I was always wondering if the guy standing next to me or sitting next to me was the one who had raped me. And I would walk through campus just staring at faces, just wondering who raped me. If I just knew who raped me. I didn't talk about it for a very long time. Of course, I got married. My husband and I, we just went on like it didn't happen. And then I remember Facebook came. That year, it was 2011. And I started this group for women because there was so much inside of me I wanted to talk about. So I started this Facebook group for women. And I started talking about all of the things I'd been through, all the abuse, the rape. I just wanted to know if there were other women who had been through similar experiences, who had had similar experiences. And boy, they just came pouring in, Most of them they would come to me and say, oh, well, we don't have the courage to talk about it publicly like you're doing, but this is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. I felt it was time to come out and talk about it, to break the chains, break, that silence, to defy it, to defy the stigma. And so I started to talk about it. And a couple of people reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to talk on their platforms. And I did. I obliged. And I started talking about these things publicly. And more women started to reach out to me. And many times I would have to go and see them. Sometimes I had to travel to see them because they just needed that touch. They just needed somebody to sit down and listen to them. And then over time, I think therapy also became available for rape survivors. And so I started pointing them in that direction and saying, hey, you can get therapy, you can begin to talk to therapists now. Although in Nigeria, therapy is very expensive. It's so expensive that most people cannot afford therapy. Even when they have mental health issues, they cannot afford therapy. But I know sometimes there were free group therapies that people could join. So they joined. I joined as well because I was still trying to heal from my pain. These days, I focus more on girls because when I think about what I went through as a girl and nobody was talking to me, there was no one to reach out to me. I go to the rural areas and I go to the schools and I talk to the girls. I provide sanitary pads for them. I address period poverty, which is a thing here. And because a lot of girls get into situations where they cannot afford sanitary pads, because I remember when I was a teenager and asking my father for for sanitary pads, and he would rain abuses on me. And then I was like, I'm never going to ask you again. If you're going to say all those horrible things to me because of a sanitary pad. And so I had to get sanitary pad myself, at 14. My mother passed away when I was 15, and I was on my own from then on. Even though I lived with my father, I was basically on my own. So I go to teenagers now, and I tell them, whatever you need, call me. Call me. If you're sick, call me. If you need anything, if you're hungry, call me. And if anybody touches you, I teach them about protecting themselves from all of the things I went through, and then talking about it. And here I meet girls whose fathers sleep with them. There's a lot of incest going on here. I meet girls who are being molested in their homes. They live with their guardians, and sometimes the children of their guardians molest them. A lot of all of that happens here. But I just make myself available to them so that they can get the help they need. Because I am able to reach agencies. They don't have the information. A lot of people don't have the information about where to go when rape happens, where to go when abuse happens. But I know where to go. I know how to help them. So that's what I'm doing right now. I run an NGO, Sisters Interact Network Foundation, to address the plight of rape victims or rape survivors and survivors of domestic violence. But of course, we have to employ different strategies, which is why I talk about providing sanitary pads for girls in schools in the rural areas. Because when you can identify with their basic need, when you identify with period poverty, as I'm able to do, they are able to also open up to you about what's really going on with them. So by providing those materials for them, and then teaching them about non-compliance when it comes to silence, when it comes to sexual molestation, by teaching them about that, self-preservation, they are able to talk to me. If abuse happens, they will open up to me. They will tell me what's going on with them, and I can help them because I know how to get help for them, but they don't know how to get help. They think anything can happen to them. They feel hopeless, they feel helpless. But I always tell them, you're not alone. There are so many people out there who will help to protect you. Unfortunately, I also know that in Nigeria, the justice system is lame here. It's not as effective as it ought to be. So most times it's difficult to get justice, but we fight. We still push it. We push. We do the best we can. We push so that it can get better, so that more women can believe in the system and trust the system to protect them. That protection is not really available as such, or as much as it should be. As a matter of fact, most women don't even know where to go, like I said. But we are still pressing and pushing, carrying out awareness programs here and there to educate women and girls about how they can protect themselves and even get justice if and when abuse happens. What I would say to any survivor is that pain has a purpose. Always look at pain like it has a purpose. Ask yourself, what is the purpose in this pain that I'm feeling, or that I'm dealing with, or that I'm going through? And then find that purpose in the pain and use it. Use it. Just use it, because that might be what you have been assigned to do. That's how I see it. I see it like this is an assignment for me. And maybe that was my path. Maybe I had to go through that. I'm not saying it was right that I went through it, but I've survived. I have to help other people survive. I've seen women who want to take their lives because rape happened to them, or because they have been so abused, they feel dehumanized. And then I tell them my story. I let them know that there's purpose in this thing. You just have to find the purpose and break the pattern and move on. I am in my 40s now, right? I like I said, I'm working with girls right now. My focus is girls because I want them to have a pain-free life. You know, something different from what my experience was like. And it's beautiful just working with these girls and giving them hope. These girls are in the rural areas, they're in villages. They don't have much hope, you know. Their schools are not great. They don't have many opportunities. But I bring hope to them. And then I show them a lot of love and care, which is really great. I get a lot of letters and text messages rather from them telling me, you know, how great, what they think of me and how the work that I'm doing with them has helped them. And I have 3 amazing kids as well who love me, you know. And then I want to say that sometimes, you know, people ask me if I have healed from all the trauma. I think it's a journey. I think healing is a journey. It's not a one-off or one-time thing. You know, I still feel pain when I have to contemplate on all that I've had to deal with. I think the pain for me is a reminder of what other people are also dealing with at the moment.